Okay, first dive since getting certified with open water certification. Um, Down here in Key Largo, Florida. This first dive, I did it with Horizon Divers, and as you can see from the initial video here, a couple things. One, I got this going in 2 times speed, just to make the viewing a little better, because these videos end up being 30 plus minutes long. So I'm not exactly sure how I want to go about doing these videos, whether it's best to leave them at regular speed or, this current 2 times speed, just so we can get through the clips and the footage. But yeah, this was December 2nd down in Key Largo. The water temps were warmer than the air temps. We had about a 73 degree air temp, 73 degree water temp, and probably high to mid 50s in the air. So just a couple things to notice here from the footage off the get-go. It is slow going with this current. We jumped right in the water, and this was 3 to 4 knots of current just headed straight into our faces. So we're swimming into the current here, and you can see we're barely moving against the bottom of the ocean floor here. You can see in frame our the dive master. I was blanking on that word for a moment. The dive master is doing the smart thing here, and what I should have been doing, which is sticking to the bottom of the seafloor. It really helps when you're dealing with these strong currents to just glue yourself down to the floor and not be in the center of the water column like me, just taking the full force of it. So I was down here with a buddy of mine doing this first dive after we both got certified. And we jumped in here and we were like, wow, this is intense, for a first dive since being certified. We didn't see any marine life. The visibility was terrible. And there's a few times here you'll see in the clips where, it's a little hard to tell with my camera angle, but the dive master would go, we'd swim along, just huffing and puffing, blowing through our air, and we would, swim a little bit, and then the dive master would go, swim up to the top, poke his head up, and look around to see how close we are to the reef, because we were just making no progress. And this probably goes on for about 15 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes is us just swimming to the reef. It's not like we're that far away. This first location we were at was Horseshoe Reef. So there you saw the dive master just shoot up in frame. And I'm down here with the other people I was diving with, and you can see Shrek right there. That guy was nice. Small group. It was me, my buddy, and this random guy, and the dive master. So we're looking at each other right there, man. Like, what are we supposed to do? And I'm pretty sure I signaled to say, hey, we need to, stay down because the dive master's just looking around. So there, the dive master is in frame. We're following him. And, like all dive masters, it seems they always have perfect trim and buoyancy. Just really good kicking form. So these are things that I'm trying to, look at more experienced people and kind of model what they're doing. Because, as you can see from this clip, it's hard to tell just because it's sped up, but I am using my hands a lot. More than I would like to. There's my buddy there signaling some barracuda. So we finally make it to the reef after it feels like forever. And I wish I showed this more in this particular dive, but my air gauge, I'd like to shown where I was at here because, you know, we started at 3,000 psi, and by the time we got to this reef, we were already down to 1,500 psi, which, you know, is like a half tank. So at some point here in the dive, my buddy and I, we look at each other and you know, we see that we're both on half air, and you know, we're like, well, we better start conserving air because we just got to the reef and we haven't even looked around yet. So, and when we finally got to this reef, it was really like, okay, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is what we're supposed to be seeing, not just, you know, some seagrass and the sand floor. You know, we got to see the first big barracuda school of the trip. So I was already like, okay, this is cool now. And we're swimming through these tight passages. You know, this is good practice for me. Having to deal with the current blowing us around and making sure that I, you know, stay off any coral, any rock. So I'm staying a little higher in the water column than maybe the dive master was, because I wasn't as confident with my buoyancy not to get blown into something. And that was really the main concern that I had, was making sure that my buoyancy was good and trying to keep good trim. You know, I had using 8 pounds for this dive, and that seemed to be pretty good for me. 8 pounds. I don't know if my equipment was heavy, but my one buddy, he was using nearly double the weight I was, which that was a little confusing to me. How it's not like he was that much bigger than me anyways, so it was interesting to see the weight differences people use, different kind of weights. So, you know, in my previous scuba video where I just showed off my gear, some new additions to my gear here. I'm wearing the Bear Reactive wetsuit. Now, this is a very high-end wetsuit. I think they retail for just over $500. And now, when I was down there over Thanksgiving in Florida, I actually just popped into one of the many dive shops down there in South Florida on Black Friday, and just so happenly this wetsuit was on the 30% Black Friday sale, so I had to pick it up because I was in the market for one. So I got the 3 mil, and for 72-degree water temperature, this thing was perfect. I had no complaints. Really nice wetsuit, kept me warm the entire trip. Even when I was out of the water on the boat, it was super insulated. So yeah, no complaints there, just a good product. A few other things that happened. So when I did my checkout dives for the cert, the hose connecting to the turret for the SMB. Sorry, not for the SMB, for the pressure gauge. Why am I SPG, submersible pressure gauge? Wow, that was tough this morning to say that. But the SPG hose that goes into the turret, the connecting point was actually loose, and was blowing air out of it. So that was definitely a concern I had going into this dive trip, was having, leaky reg set. So prior to this dive trip, I went to the dive shop and I had one of the guys there working there just check it over for me, and he tightened it up, all the connection points, blew some soapy water on it, and we pressurized it, and made sure that there was no bubbles, and and it worked perfectly after that. No issues. He did that all free of charge. So at this point in the clip, as you might have saw, the dive master just went out of frame, and the random guy and the dive master just went through a swim through. Now my buddy and I didn't want to go through that swim through because we didn't have lights and it was super dark. So what you see here is kind of terrifying. A little moment of panic where we're looking for where the swim through lets out, and we can't find them. So we end up surfacing here, which is not what you're supposed to do. And as you can hear, you hear some shaking. I'm looking all around. Keep in mind this is at 2x speed, so things seem way more panicked than they probably really were. But we come up to the surface here, and I'm like, hey man, I couldn't find where you were at. The dive master came up to the surface with us, and he was like, what happened? And I was like, I didn't want to go. And that was something that I wasn't the happiest about, really, for this dive, was the fact that we didn't discuss prior to going on the dive that there will be swim throughs that we'll go through. And if you don't feel comfortable with the swim through, what do we do? I felt like that could have been addressed better, because what happened was not the best situation, where we essentially got lost. I mean, really, we just stayed in place, looked around the general area to see if we can find anyone. I mean, worst case scenario, we surfaced, got our bearings again, and if we had to head back to the boat, that's what we would have to do. Or deploy our surface marker buoy, our SMB, if things got really bad. So here, in the clip, we're ending the dive. As I said earlier, we got to the reef with 1500 psi, so we're trying to jet back. Now, luckily, we were fighting the current the whole way to the boat. So now going back, we'll get to just have a nice easy cruise back, which if the current reversed and we were at as low of air as we were at, might have been a different story getting back to the boat. As you can see here, we're kind of just getting jetted back. I'm doing more of my dumb hand movements. It's really hard for me to try to break that out of my head. I know it's not really the best thing to do. It's kind of useless to use your hands, but when I'm close to these reefs, I feel like I'm doing like micro adjustments with my hands. So it's just a bad habit. And there's a close encounter with a barracuda. There's a lot of, with the low visibility, I felt like you kind of sneak up on the fish a little bit more. A couple times we'd round the corners and there's massive barracuda sitting right there. So here, my one friend, he's low on air, he's getting low on air, he's having a hard time with the buoyancy, so the dive master signals to give him a weight from him. So we transfer a weight to my buddy here to help him with his buoyancy, because he just couldn't sink down to the bottom. This was the first dive, and we just didn't get the weight 100% right, for him at least. I felt pretty good with just getting lucky, with the weight selection I had. And he's pointing out here that there was some kind of shark, a nurse shark. You might have just saw a glimpse of it, but I'm trying to, here's a little stingray swimming through. Can't look for long because we know we're low on air. Um, there's my buddy to the right. Now he's got a little bit lower than air than I did, and I didn't really realize that. Something that we could have probably done better as a group here was check each other's air more frequently, because it turns out my buddy's air actually got down to 200 psi by the time we got to the boat, which is too low. Um, we are diving only 30 some feet on this shallow reef dive, so it's really pretty low danger risk, but still, for a practice, returning at 200 psi is not great. And you may hear at some point his alarm's actually going off in this clip. His computer's yelling at him to surface. So that was really could have been handled better, and could have been a potentially dangerous situation if he truly ran out of air. I mean, he said he was sucking from his reg and it was tough to pull air, so if you didn't have your BCD filled up and you're trying to surface or something, I feel like if you're just out of air and you lost buoyancy, or you just can't surface, and you try to fill up your BCD with no air and it just doesn't fill up, that's kind of terrifying. But I guess really, if you're properly weighted, that shouldn't be a huge issue, because since you've sucked all your air down, you're actually lighter, which should increase your buoyancy, so you should be able to swim up easier. But still, it's also bad for the air. So this dive master's like, hey, you guys need to go up. He's out of air. My buddy's out. You can hear the computer yelling, like, surface, like, come up. So that's the dive. Bit of a shit show for first dive. We got back on the boat and they're like, wow, that was a hell of a dive to come just off your cert, that current and the visibility, but managed to make it. And we had many other great dives after this, but this one was definitely the most intense.